If there was a single car type that best symbolises our motoring landscape, chances are it would be a four-door saloon, as it's always been Singapore's most popular car body style until this year. At Asia's Ultimate Tyre Awards, we are finding out what are the best tyres that you can buy in Southeast Asia. And in this episode, we'll be having a look at premium comfort or touring tyres. The car we use for this category is the newly facelifted 2021 Kia Cerato, a shining example of the typical 1.6-litre saloon car that has been a staple family transport for many generations of Singaporeans.
We've tested the tyres in 225/45 R17 size, which is one of the most common sizes of any type of tyre in the market. That's reflected in the entry list, which is the longest of any of our tyre categories this year. Now, the 7 contenders are the Pirelli CINTURATO P7, YOKOHAMA ADVAN DB V552, MICHELIN PRIMACY 4ST, NEXEN and FERA SU1, HANKOOK VENTUS S1 Evo 3, Davanti DX640, and last but not least, the triangle SPORTEX TH201. Now, the more knowledgeable among you might spot that some of these are not proper comfort or touring tyres and are in fact high performance or even ultra high performance. But this is the category that these brands chose to enter them in. And as we'll see, the results, well, don't quite go the way you might think. As you'd expect, given the number of participants, this category had the largest variance in the overall results, with a 16% final score difference between best to worst. Yet it was also remarkably close at the top, with even small changes in weightage affecting the overall order.
With that said, seeing as this category is all about comfort and everyday drivability, we decided on a score weightage that prioritized noise and refinement, as well as safety in terms of braking and wet grip. Rolling resistance was also taken into consideration, as good fuel economy is also appreciated by many drivers.
In 7th place is the Davanti DX640, which was the one tyre with the furthest score from the best in its class. A UHP tyre that's engineered in England, or so the company says, but made in China, the Davantis also had the lowest raw cumulative score of any tyre overall in this test. It performed particularly badly in wet braking, with a 90 to 0 km/h braking distance of 28.7 meters, which was nearly 50% longer to stop than the best in this category. It wasn't particularly refined either, with our test marshals and drivers noting that it was audibly louder than all its other rivals, even without looking at the instruments. It ended up registering 89 decibels in the noise test, which was 6 decibels more than the next loudest comfort tyre and 11 decibels more than the class leader. That said, it wasn't too bad in dry braking and wet grip, finishing about mid-pack.
In 6th is the SPORTEX TH201 from Chinese brand Triangle. Naturally the source of many jokes among our drivers and crew, but despite all the puns about triangular rubber being terrible for refinement though, it came in a joint 3-way tie for 2nd place in the noise test, just 1 dB off the class winner. The drivers also noted that subjectively, it was more than decent in terms of grip, handling and feel in the dry, and it had the 2nd best dry grip score. But unfortunately, those stations weren't a big part of our weightage. Instead, it had the 2nd worst wet grip score actually, and did only slightly better than the Davantis in wet braking. The Triangle were also the outright worst in dry braking.
In 5th place, we have the Yokohama ADVAN DB V552. For something with dB in its name, i.e. decibels, and with the tagline dramatic silence, the V552s were actually not that quiet. In fact, it was the 2nd loudest in this category and a significant 5 decibels louder than the leader. It was also poor in dry braking, virtually tying with the Triangle for worst, although it had a better mid-pack result for wet braking. Other than that, it had an exceptional 2nd best score in wet grip and a 3rd best in rolling resistance. So despite not exactly living up to its name, the Yokohama DB V552 does at least seem to be a solid choice for wet safety.
Next up was a bit of a surprise for us, the Michelin Primacy for ST. As one of the absolute best tyre brands in the world, we expected big things from the Michelins, but it performed the worst of everything in anything related to cornering, so it means handling and grip. It had the slowest lap time around the handling course and almost equal lowest dry grip, but it was in wet grip that the Primacy was particularly let down, scoring just over 10% less than the next tyre, which was the Triangle. It wasn't so great in wet braking either, being closer to the two budget tyres than the other premium or mid-range competitors here. Its dry braking was better, although still only average and in fact marginally behind the Davanti. The only tests it did well in were noise and rolling resistance, being the quietest and by some margin being the most efficient. This may have saved the Michelins from a poorer showing in the rankings thanks to our weightages, but if the driver's priorities lie more towards road holding, then these results are something to keep in mind.
On to the podium places now, and in third place is the NEXEN and FERA SU1 from Korea, which is actually one of the OE tyres for the Kia Cerato in some markets. Like the Triangle and Davanti, NEXEN labels this as a UHP tyre, which explains its second worst score in rolling resistance, but doesn't explain how this supposedly sporty tyre is part of a three-way tie for second place in noise. As for the performance or safety related metrics, it did good, but not exceptional, coming in third for wet grip, dry braking and wet braking.
In second, we have the new PIRELLI CINTURATO P7, or sometimes called the P7C2. For a true comfort tyre, the P7 did really well, with second place scores in rolling resistance and both dry and wet braking. Its showing in the noise test was pretty close too, but in terms of wet grip, it was slightly below class average. Overall, a very decent showing for this new tyre.
Which leaves us with our winner, the HANKOOK VENTUS S1 Evo 3. Now, we emphasize the Pirellis being a true comfort tyre, and that's because technically, the VENTUS S1 Evo 3 is a UHP tyre. That explains why it easily smashed this category for all 5 of the high performance tests, the handling, the 2 grips, the 2 brakings, and why it had the worst in class score for rolling resistance. Yet, the expected drawback in refinement never materialized, as the HANKOOKs were the final piece of the 3-way tie for second place in the noise test. In fact, this tie was composed entirely of what are supposedly performance tyres. Yet, let us remind you, it was just 1 decibel off the quietest, which were the Michelins. So, not exactly a comfort tyre then, but nevertheless, it more than held its own against rivals that are more suited to this category's brief. The HANKOOK VENTUS S1 Evo 3 then is Asia's ultimate premium comfort tyre. If you'd like to check out the results of our other tyre categories, Eco, Mainstream, SUV and Ultra High Performance, the links to those videos will be in the description below. And if you want to go even more in depth and geek out on the numbers and the data, you can find everything on our website, auta.sg. Do consider giving us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you like the concept of an objective tyre test like this. Your support will greatly help us go bigger and better next year. Thank you all very much for watching. Take care.